I can't tell. Is that a fever or a prophecy? Welcome to the depths. Hello, welcome or welcome back to Reading from the Depths. My name is Leighton. Thank you for spending some time with me. Today I just have a quick review for you. This is of Fever Dream of a Parasite by Pedro Iniguez. It's a collection of short stories being published by Raw Dog Screaming Press in mid-March 2025, and I did receive a complimentary copy in exchange for an honest review. But I have to say, this is a really great collection of dark, emotional horror stories. I think what Iniguez does really well is in every story he's able to drop you right in and give you a sense of place and of character really quickly. So you're invested in the story right from the beginning. And this collection has 21 short stories in it, and they range in length. Some of them are quite short, others are a little longer, but they all feel like they know what they need to be. The ones that are longer feel like the exact right length. They don't feel like they go on too long. And the short ones are just like quick little punches that get in and they get out and they leave you wanting more. I think that's my overall impression is I want more in a good way, in the best of ways. These stories, for the most part, are very introspective. They're very kind of, let's say, empathic, but they're also bleak. They're dark. They are emotional. And part of that is because they are exploring both situations and characters that are kind of overlooked. Right? So most of the characters you see littered throughout these stories are from marginalized communities or from forgotten communities. So it could be immigrants, it might be sex workers, ex-convicts, single parents, refugees, killers, all different types of people that are on the outskirts of society. People that are essentially broken people, not because of who they are, but because of how they're treated by society. So people that are from the outside looking in, not because there's anything inherently wrong with them, but due to the way they are experiencing the world. So these are at the center of these stories, and the stories explore all different themes, whether it be ideas of isolation and abandonment, or ideas of poverty, shame, trauma, fears of deportation or racism. All of these social issues combined with these characters who are outsiders, who are forgotten, who are marginalized, to really create a strong beating heart in all of these stories. These stories range in a number of genres. I'd say if you have to choose one, they lean towards the cosmic. There are a lot that invoke cosmic imagery and cosmic ideas in a really exciting way. It's not overplayed, but it is impactful when it comes. But there's also a lot of psychological terror. And then there's a few glimpses at, let's say, folk horror and a little bit of like weird fiction mixed in as well. So there are a number of subgenres represented in this collection. But all the stories have in common this beating heart of being about people, being about isolation. And they all have this tone that's really bleak. But the writing is really strong, I think. Across all the stories, the writing pulls you in and it tells you exactly where to go, right? It grips you right from the beginning. Like I said, he has a really good hand at creating atmosphere and creating the world and introducing you to the characters very, very quickly, right? You don't waste any time with it. And so you feel invested right from the beginning of each story and it pulls you along. And the writing, whether it is regarding dialogue or just exposition, it's punchy, it's direct, it's not overly poetic, but especially when dealing with some of the cosmic issues, it has like almost a grandiose nature in an appropriate way. So like I said, every story feels like it knows what it is. So I was really impressed how each story was crafted. They feel very meticulous. Of the 21 stories, I liked almost all of them. There's only one of them that I think I didn't really get on with. And that, I think, is because the dialogue in that one felt a little overwrought. It was trying to fit into a certain genre, and the dialogue didn't work for me. The story itself, I thought, was exciting. It was one of the longer ones, actually, and I thought that the running time was perfect. Like the way the plotting happened was really, really strong, but the dialogue took me out of it because it seemed a little more forced than it had to be. But literally, that was one story out of the 21. So I think the overwhelming majority of these stories are really strong. Now, if I am going to say one small critique, it would be that there's a sameness to a lot of the stories. And I don't mean that they're dealing with the same issue or they have the same characters or even the same structure, but they have the same tone and the same writing style for the most part. There are two stories that stand out because they're written in a different style. One of them is written in a non-linear fashion. I think it has 3 or 4 sections, but the sections don't follow linear order. And another one is written as if it were an article written by an investigative journalist. So those two stand out as having a different narrative structure, but the rest of them all feel very similar, just in the tone and in the language and in the way of being expressed. And now in any individual story level, they work really, really well. But as a collection, having that similarity of tone becomes noticeable. So if you're like me and you like to read short story collections all at once, then that is something that you'll notice. But if you just like to drop in and out, or you read a short story collection along with another novel, maybe 1 or 2 stories a day or something like this, then this isn't something you would notice at all, because every single story feels right. They feel like the appropriate tone and the language and writing for that story. It's just that that is something that is similar across many of the stories. Another small thing I might criticize, and this is like damning praise almost, but you know how often you hear the advice in stories as well as in film that you need to show, not tell. Well, he does a great job in all the stories of doing that. The story is built up to whatever length it needs to be, and if he not all the stories are making a point about some grand issue, whether it be poverty or discrimination or immigration or any of these things. But the ones that are, they don't feel throughout the course of the story like they're hitting you over the head with it. It feels like a natural experience for the characters. So he does a lot of showing, not telling. He does a great job of it. And yet, at a lot of the stories, after the end of the story, after whatever that gotcha moment is that so often happens at the end of a lot of short horror stories, he'll have 1 or 2 lines that will be the telling. And literally, in at least a half dozen of these stories, I just wanted to delete those last 2 sentences because they weren't necessary. Because he'd already done all the work in the rest of the story to give you everything you needed to have this nice little feast. And then that was like 1 line too far at the end. So I say that as a criticism or a damning praise, because I think literally they're the last line of any story. You can just ignore it. It almost felt like a little bit lack of confidence in his storytelling, because he wanted to add that little line at the end to make sure you knew what he was talking about. But he'd done such a good job in the rest of the story that it wasn't necessary. So it felt like maybe he either didn't trust his writing or he didn't trust the reader quite enough to get what he was giving. But it was all there. He has all the skills to do it. So some of the stories, I might just ignore the last sentence because it just was 1 step too far. The rest of the story did all the work for me. So that's why I say it's a kind of damning praise, that I think he does a really good job of showing, not telling, except for some of the final sentences. To be honest, though, it didn't bother me. It was something I noticed, and I noticed it because it was in more than one story. But again, I only noticed it because they felt so superfluous, because the stories themselves were so well constructed. They were so well crafted. They gave you everything you needed to understand what he was interested in exploring, whether it was something very explicit or whether it was an idea that is under the surface of the story, and whether he was, employing these cosmic gods or these supernatural creatures as a way to explore that idea, or whether it was in a more psychological vein. It was all there. So I really appreciated the stories. I thought they were well constructed. I think maybe my favorite story is a really short one, and it almost is paying homage to It's a Wonderful Life. I think maybe it just has a lonely, introspective character at Christmas time, which is what gives you those vibes. But I really liked it. I thought it was punchy. It was unexpected. And I think I can say that, though, about a lot of these stories, is that they're unexpected. In general, that's a pretty common formula for short horror fiction, and I think it works really well, where you are inserted in the middle of the action. You don't start at the beginning. You start after things have already started happening, and then you're left to figure out what's been going on as you move forward at the same time. And then there's some sort of twist, some sort of payoff, some sort of gotcha moment where the rug gets pulled out from under you. And that's a really effective way to tell a story in short horror fiction especially. And he does that quite a lot, but it always feels appropriate. Every story feels like this is the right way for this story to go, and it left me surprised quite often. Even though I expected there to be that twist at the end, some sort of twisting of the knife, it didn't always go the way I thought it was going to go. And so I definitely appreciate that. I thought it was really skillful that even though I know a surprise is coming, he still manages to catch me off guard. So in summary, I think this is a really fun collection. Like I said, it's dark, it's bleak, but it is fun, and it is exploring interesting ideas and important ideas, as well as focusing on characters who aren't often given the limelight. I think is an exciting voice. Like his narrative voice or his authorial voice is really clear, or it comes through clearly, and I think it's exciting. I think the stories are really well crafted. They are emotionally resonant. They are dark, and they are hard-hitting, even though many of them are quite short. So if you like short stories, if you like short horror stories especially, I think this is a great collection. I highly recommend it. And reading these stories leaves me really excited to see what else this author does, because I thought these were great, and so I look forward to reading more from him. I hope you get a chance to read this collection. Let me know down below, have you read any of his short fiction? I think of these 21 stories, only one of them was original for this collection. The rest had been published in other anthologies. I had read one of them already in a separate anthology. The rest of them were new to me. So I'd love to hear if you've read anything by him before, or in general, what do you think of short horror fiction? Is it a genre and a storytelling modality that you enjoy? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments, but for now, I'll say thank you for spending some time with me today. I appreciate you. please be kind to yourselves, take care of each other, and go slowly.